was coming in from the cabinet meet was the much awaited relief for the telecom sector. We were the first ones to tell you about it on the 14th of September, and it's pretty much what we told you. A 4-year moratorium for adjusted gross revenues, that's AGR, spectrum usage charges, license fee. However, the outstanding dues will have to be paid in the subsequent 5 years. Vodafone Idea, of course, being in the most financially precarious situation, the fears of it being a going concern, has all of that been alleviated by the cabinet? What the cabinet, however, has done is also provided a long-term roadmap with structural reforms. So while Vodafone Idea was in the ICU and there was looking like India may have a duopoly when it comes to the telecom sector, the long-term structural reforms talk about a new definition for AGR, taking out the non-telecom revenue. It talks about, no longer having hefty penalties, whether it is interest, whether it's interest on interest, and it'll be compounded annually, not the current system of monthly. All of this is prospective in nature. All of this to revive the telecom sector. Clarity as far as auctions will be held. It's going to be held in the 4th quarter of a financial year, as the telecom minister said. Here he is in conversation with my colleague Ruchi Bhatia.
The cabinet today has approved the much-needed relief for the telecom sector. Joining us now on ET Now is the telecom minister. Sir, I appreciate you taking your time out and speaking with us today at ET Now. Let me first begin by asking you on the big announcement today on the telecom relief, where you have announced that the 4-year moratorium period will be given as far as AGR dues are concerned. The big question that many experts are asking is that at the end of the day, you will have to pay these dues to the government. I want to ask you, is it really kicking the can down the road, or are you expecting a significant change in the health of the telecom companies in the time period or the leeway that you've given?
Look at the entire package in a holistic way. What are the reforms in it? There are structural reforms. First reform is the AGR definition. That itself will solve so many of the issues which are there. The issue about penalty, the issue about monthly compounding of interest. All those things basically go a long way in improving the financial health of the telecom players. Over a period of 4 years, as people earn, they repay their dues. I think that's a very balanced way of looking at things, where the government revenues are not affected, as well as the industry is getting the right opportunity to upgrade their network using the free cash flows and invest in newer technologies.
So, again, I'll ask, are you expecting a significant change in the health of these telecom companies? Because, in the last couple of months, we have seen how Vodafone Idea was under a severe stress, so much so that Kumar Mangalam Birla himself had to, ask the government to look at certain measures, even decided to tell the government that he's wanting to give up his stake as well. So, are you expecting a significant change in the health of these companies as well?
I am expecting, and the industry itself is also very sure that with this kind of reforms, which is, people are calling it path breaking, but with this kind of reforms, the financial health of all the existing telecom players will improve significantly, and hopefully more players may also join.
Up until now, sir, one of the big concerns that we were seeing was perhaps that if we don't take these measures, then it could lead to a duopoly. Given the fact that these reforms today that you've announced are going to have a far-reaching impact, are you expecting fresh investment into the telecom sector as well? Perhaps an opportunity that we may look at more than 3 players?
Definitely, this set of reforms which has been approved by the Prime Minister in his cabinet meeting today will go a long way in maintaining healthy competition, will definitely ensure that more and more investment comes in. Things are easing out. I'm sure more investment will come in, which will lead to more employment and better services for the people.
I also have to ask you, sir, besides, of course, rationalizing the AGR payments and certain, other rationalization in terms of interests and much more, you have also announced the extension of spectrum life beyond 20 years to 30 years. What are going to be the larger revenue implications for the government for a move like this?
Spectrum increasing the life from 20 years to 30 years was a long pending demand. And the logic behind that is very simple. Technology has to be planned thoroughly. we have to have a roadmap. Industry needs a roadmap so that they can decide the infrastructure, they can decide the technology, they can decide what level of services to be given. So for all that, 20 years to 30 years was very important. There won't be any impact on government revenues.
So having said that, sir, I also want to ask you on the, one of the other announcements today that you made in terms of conversion of the current debt into equity for some of these telecom companies at the end of 4 years. Talk to us about how this is really going to happen. Who will be the one, in terms of which body in the government will be taking this call at the end of the 4-year period?
4 years is a long enough period for any company to come out of any financial crisis. The rationalization of bank guarantees, the rationalization of AGR, the simplifications in the interest and penalty regime, all those things are, in my opinion, and also in industry's opinion, are.
We're going to be taking that story forward, and we've got experts here to talk more about this. So representing the telecom companies is General S.P Kochhar, the Director General at the COAI. We're also being joined by the former Secretary of the Department of Telecommunications, R. Chandrashekhar, and we're being joined by Peeyush, Vaish, the partner at Deloitte India. Gentlemen, welcome to the India Development Debate. Thank you so much for giving us your time. General Kochhar, I'm going to come to you first because, you know, you've actually got skin in the game. You're representing an association of the telecom players. We have, of course, seen from a Mukesh Ambani to a Kumar Mangalam Birla to a Sunil Bharti Mittal, press releases applauding the government. My question first up to you is that has enough been done to make sure that India will continue to have 3 telecom players? Or is the situation of having a duopoly still very, very serious? Is Vodafone Idea out of ICU? Is it no longer critical?
Well, I would say that at the outset, we welcome this, the release which has come and the package which has come. More than that, we welcome the statement made that they have recognized the telecom workers finally as they have recognized the work put in by telecom workers during COVID and kept the economy running. So that is something which is actually an icing on the cake. As far as the cake is concerned, yes, it is a welcome step, and it will remove the distress from telecom to a very large extent. And it is, as you've seen yourself, it is prospective in nature, and the minister has also gone on record saying that there will be no loss in revenue to the government. It will only be postponed. So in that sense, going forward, the telecom industry will definitely gain. As far as the pointed question about the duopoly is concerned, the minister answered it in his press conference. The government is also keen that it doesn't become a duopoly. They're actually welcoming more players into the system. They're not looking at any exits, which means that the policies that have been announced, the concessions that have been given are pointed towards that direction. And you can see that happening if the 100% FDI is permitted. That will attract a lot of money into telecom sector. That will attract a lot of interest into telecom sector. We might end up getting more players. I don't see any exits happening in the immediate future. But I have also learned that you cannot really predict what happens. Like you can't predict the share market, you can't predict any market. But a reasonable assertion is that I don't think there will be any exits, and things will go on. There is enough breathing space, enough breathing time which has been given to all, which will make them look up, see how they can manage in the situation that they have.
Okay, so you're not expecting an exit and caveating it with, of course, nobody has a crystal ball. Mr. Chandrashekhar, I want to come to you now. So what the government has done is basically, one way to look at it is kick the problem down the road by saying a 4-year moratorium. Along with that, of course, there are structural reforms that have been announced, whether it's 100% FDI, a new definition of AGR, no longer penalizing companies with hefty penalties, interest on interest. All that is well and good, but just picking up on the fact of what it means for consumers, and at this juncture, I'd like to read out a press statement that has been issued by the Nick Reed, the CEO of Vodafone Group, who says that although the sector has struggled for many years, we expect the government's constructive initiative announced today, along with continued strong support of the Telecom Minister and Finance Minister, will be the beginning of a new era of India's digital ambition and for Vodafone Idea's continued contribution to creating an inclusive digital society. Mr. Chandrashekhar, is it now official, you think, with this statement that is coming in, caveating, of course, continued support, but going on to say that how the company is looking to be a part, continue to be a part of the digital ecosystem?
Yes, of course. I mean, the intentions, I think, have never been in doubt. And obviously, the company, the promoters, the investors, the lenders would all be expecting or hoping to continue to remain in business. The problem was whether the challenges were surmountable or not. So I agree with General Kochhar, first of all, that this is an excellent package that the government has come out with, very logical, very rational. These are all eminently sensible measures which probably could have or should have been taken quite some time back, but better now than later. And it does address a lot of the pressing problems. It does clear the way for further investments in 5G and new infrastructure and so on. And it does, to some extent, address the overhang of the past in terms of the liquidity aspect of the problem. I think the question that you asked is quite pertinent. While I think everyone who is familiar with the sector would appreciate what the government has come out with, the moot point is to what extent does it resolve the crisis facing Vodafone in particular, and to a much lesser extent some of the other players as well. And I think there the issue is that the problem for Vodafone has been twofold. One is the extreme, cash flow crunch and the liquidity crunch, which the AGR judgment and all the dues together led to. And I think that put it in the critical care stage. So the cash flow problem, I think, has been significantly addressed by this, and therefore there is no imminent or immediate danger, as was pointed out by General Kochhar. However, the second part of the problem that Vodafone was facing was the viability itself, and the viability of the business, the viability of the company, given the situation in which the balance sheets have been on account of all of these dues. That has not fundamentally changed because a moratorium obviously only pushes the payment a little further down, doesn't affect the amount due. It is with interest, although there are some sweeteners in terms of how the interest liability can be met through equity, etc. So all of this, I think, means that the number crunchers will be seriously at work to figure out what it means for the balance sheet of the company. But I think whatever the steps and the government statements may say, and whatever the analysts may say, ultimately the litmus test is an empirical one, which is, are investors going to invest? Are the promoters going to invest after this package? The second is, are lenders going to lend after this package? And that, I think, there is still, to my mind, a bit of a question mark, given that what has eased is the cash flow. I think when people invest, they want to see viability, they want to see returns over a period of time. Everyone understands that telecom is a long-term game. It's not a short-term game. It's investment heavy. But at the heart of every business, viability and profitability is a key factor.
Right. So, so far the two gentlemen on the panel are saying that forget about anyone exiting, you might see more players coming in. I want to take that point forward to Peeyush, Vaish, the partner at Deloitte. Peeyush, you talk to all of these companies, you help them figure out their business plans, their investment plans, this, that and the other. So point taken, and Vodafone Idea's statement to that effect are also pointing to the fact that forget about a duopoly at the moment. I don't know whether new telecom companies are going to be entering, but the 9 structural reforms are, of course, what the market had been watching out for, whether it's a definition of the AGR, a proper timeline when it comes to spectrum auctions. And I want to take that point forward now. Vodafone Idea has been in the most financially precarious situation. It gets to kick down the road 4 years certain payments. It owes about 1.8 lakh crore rupees, out of which nearly 60,000 crores is AGR. But if you're going to have 5G auctions, is it still looking like it's going to be Jio and Bharti Airtel as of now that will be in a position to participate, that will be Bharti and Jio in a position right now to consolidate their positions? Anyway, we've been seeing Vodafone Idea subscription levels come down.
Historically, if you see, operators who survived the market are operators who've been consistent with the technologies in the market. So my personal view is that with this moratorium being given, I think there, in the short run at least, there is a cash flow that's available with all the operators. And now that the government has also made it very clear with the timelines from the auction that we will see an auction coming up hopefully in the month of January to March 2022. I personally believe that all the operators will go and bid for the 5G auctions. And this cash flow, maybe it's in the short run, I think this cash flow will help them in 2 things. A, bidding for the 5G licenses, which I think is definitely a necessity for all of them to survive. And B, in terms of rollout of the infrastructure, because both of them go in tandem. 4 years, I think the government has really thought through this period of 4 years. It is not a period which is in the short run. I think it's a relatively well-defined period of 4 years. And I think the operators will probably work over a period of time, these 4 years, to really get their balance sheets right, whether it is in terms of pricing, whether it is in terms of getting their balance sheet right, they will have to work on that. So I think that 4 years is a good enough time in the medium term to get the act together in terms of pricing, etc., to start to reap the benefits out of it. But I personally believe that we will see a good auction coming up in January to March for 5G spectrum.
Okay, so let me take that question then forward, and let's build on that, because everybody wants to know what's going to be the future of this. General, you're representing the telecom companies. We've got some idea. I don't know whether to be taken where the 5G spectrum auction will be in the 4th quarter of this year. But the minister said we need to provide clarity. Is that what the industry is now expecting, that in the 4th quarter of this financial year, by the time all the pilot projects will also be over with what's been given out to carry out 5G trials, we could see 5G spectrum auctions and the 3 players will participate? 2 obviously will. It's about the 3rd one, Vodafone Idea, whether it will readily participate.
I think you're on mute.
General?
Yeah, I said that I agree with Peeyush when he says
Go ahead, sir.
I agree with Peeyush when he says that all 3 of them will participate. Certainly, all 3 will participate. As far as the timing of the auction is concerned, I think it will spill over to next year, 1st quarter of next year. Because by the time the trials finish, by the time we get our act together, it will already be next year. And even working back from the projected launch of commercial operations in August, if you work backwards also, it fits into the 1st quarter of next year. So the auctions, as far as we anticipate, will happen in January, February, and that there will be adequate time for all 3 of them to work out their business plans by then and see how much and where will they bid for. And the second and the most important thing is that these are battle indicators which have come out of the government's office. the indication is that the government is not trying to be realistic, right? And therefore, the pricing of 5G may not be at the same level as it has been for 4G and 3G. It may become more rational, more practical, and that is what we are hoping for. We have been, as an association, in touch with the government for all these things that have been announced today, and we are happy that the government has taken note of that. We've also been in touch with them for the costing part. And in a way, indication has been given that instead of 20 years, it is now going to be for 30 years. Plus, the financial burden will also reduce because the license fee will reduce if the AGR definition changes, which has been announced. So overall, it's a good situation which has emerged. And I don't see anybody shying away from this auction as and when it happens.
Mr. Chandrashekhar, let me take that point forward to you. There's a very pertinent point that General was just making, that the industry believes that pricing will not be as big as an issue as in the past. Do you also believe that? You have a Supreme Court verdict which anyway talks about maximizing revenues when it comes to national resources. You've had committee after committee talking about the reserve price as well. You have a situation where two companies are now very, very, very well capitalized and the other one is not. How do you see this panning out? Because that's the next trigger for the markets as well.
Yeah. Well, as far as the auction itself is concerned, there's a very well laid out process. TRAI would have to recommend a certain minimum price. The government in general has not, deviated from the reserve price that the TRAI has recommended. So there's this question of whether the reserve price will be significantly altered. The second aspect, I think, is, as you have said, the question with regard to the participation of the third player, that is Vodafone Idea. Obviously, there is a very strong imperative. You can't be a serious telecom operator if you haven't bid for 5G and if you stay out of 5G. So I think that the staying out of the 5G is not an option as far as Vodafone is concerned, unless they want to signal that they are exiting. But that is certainly not going to be the situation given the kind of relief that the government has now provided. So the participation by Vodafone Idea, I think, would be a given in the current circumstances. The other question and related question, or the downstream question, is that given that there is going to be a huge asymmetry between the ability of the three players to participate meaningfully or aggressively in the auction, what would be the ability of Vodafone to compete on pricing for the spectrum? And I think there the disadvantage, I think, is likely to continue. The second thing is that, the terms of payment for the spectrum. I think while the liquidity for the future has been addressed, and there is some relief in terms of the kind of cash flows in the future, if there is a significant upfront payment, even of a part of or a fraction of that price, then obviously there will be some challenges unless the company is able to mobilize the necessary finances for doing that. So a lot will depend on their how much money they will come up with and their ability to do that.
Correct. Okay. Interesting times ahead is the best way to put it. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time, but I'd like to thank all three of you for joining us tonight on ET Now. Is the big story of the day, a relief package that has come in for the telecom sector. You saw a thumbs up from the markets as well. Bharti Airtel broke past 700 rupees a share and hit a 52-week high.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
A lot of important decisions being taken by the Union Cabinet today. We brought you